Last time, I got the roof put on. I got it framed, sheathed, and taped. So theoretically, water shouldn't get in, except for a couple of other giant holes we have. Other than the giant double doors and 3 separate windows that I have to fill, there's actually several other holes that are pretty good size, and we need to fill those too. And these spaces are the areas in between the rafters, both on the short wall and on the tall wall. So before we cover the outside walls and roof and stuff, we need to get this thing completely sealed up to keep out the air and rain and bugs and animals and stuff like that. But before we can even fill those holes and put in the windows and doors, we have to talk about some comments. And you may be thinking that I'm gonna complain about the comments, but actually I'm not. I wanted to say thank you because they've been great and nice and helpful, and I've actually learned a lot. Which brings me to this. I completely forgot to put in a cripple underneath both sides of each one of the windows. And one of the comments very kindly reminded me to do that. And I'm really glad that they did, because otherwise I probably never would have even thought about it. The fact that they said it in a nice, constructive, helpful way, and I can still get to it to fix it, made me really happy. So thank you. Actually, almost all of the comments have been super nice and helpful and forgiving, which is great because in case you've forgotten, I don't know what I'm doing. There was one more thing that was really helpful. Unfortunately, it's a little too late for me to do anything about it now, but I don't think I actually need to. Regardless, I wanted to point it out because it was a really good suggestion. When I made the front and back walls, they were both made in 4 parts. So there's a section here, here, up there, and over there. And they had to be joined together. That's not a huge deal, but when I put the sheathing on, I lined up the top of this piece with the top of the wall, and the bottom of that piece with the bottom of the wall. So the seams of the sheathing were the same as the seams of the framing, and that's weak. A couple of people pointed out that if you were to take a piece of sheathing and have it overlap all of those different seams, both the horizontal and the vertical ones, the entire wall would just be more rigid. And that makes a lot of sense, I just didn't do it. Now luckily this wall is plenty rigid as it stands, but in the future I'm gonna try to remember to overlap my sheathing over the seams of the framing just for rigidity. Anyway, thanks for that comment. Next up, I want to try to fill the gaps in between the rafters as tightly as possible to cut off airflow and potential places for bugs to get in and stuff like that. And then we'll go back and seal them as well. But I need the pieces of wood. Now, theoretically, those should all be the same distance apart, so I should be able to cut the same piece of wood and fit in each one. But I don't think I was that exact, so I think I'm going to have to do each one to fit. This video is sponsored by AG1. Now, if you're somebody like me, this is a fantastic way to supplement your nutrition, to fill in the gaps around your diet. This stuff has over 75 vitamins and minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, and it's all sourced from whole foods. This is an upgraded formula, and the best part to me is that they now have flavors. They've got a citrus, a berry, and a tropical, which is the one that I'm drinking. It's super easy to do too. 1 scoop in 8 to 12 ounces of water, you shake it up and you can take it with you. Drink it while you're walking the dog or while you're on the treadmill. It's pretty great because it fills in the nutrition gaps in your diet, no matter what your diet looks like, and it's only about $3 a day with a subscription. AG1 helps support your immune system. It helps your gut health and gives you more energy throughout the day. And, like I said, fills in the gaps in your daily nutrient intake regardless of what your diet and exercise looks like. This stuff is really good, and right now you can get a free sample pack to try. Go to drinkag1.com/ILikeToMakeStuff or use the QR code. You're gonna get one of these shakers, some D3 vitamins, and a sample kit. Definitely go check out AG1, support your gut health, and huge thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this video. Too tight. Okay, this really should not be a big deal. This should be easy to do. In fact, I expected it to be easy to do, but there's a few things working against me. One, the 2x8 I was just trying to get in there just split, like across it. I don't know why. I don't think it was my fault, it just broke. and now it's stuck in there, which is kind of a bummer. The other thing is I'm trying to do it from the front because I thought that would be easier for the camera to see, but it's actually harder to get them in place. Hammering in from the backside, the bigger opening, would be way easier. I got the first two in just fine, just had to trim them a little bit, and then I actually got this one down here in as well, but this is the one that just split. Check this out. It just broke, like across it, and now both pieces are jammed in there, but they're separate. So I'm gonna have to get them out, and then I think I'm gonna try to get the pieces in from the backside because it'll be much easier. Obviously, it's a sloped ceiling, so it's bigger in here than it is on the outside. So setting a piece right there on that ledge and then just pushing it into place, I think will work much better. All right, let's see if I'm right. It's so much easier. Now that I've shown you the hardest way possible to do that, let me tell you how I think you should do it. The easiest way to get those in place is just to think ahead. I didn't even think about it, but the best time to do it would be before the sheathing is on. When there's actually a gap in between each one of the rafters, you could drop them down from the top, nail them in place really easily, and you could use them as spacers for the rafters to make sure the rafters are exactly the right distance apart. So just think ahead. Unfortunately, I still have to do those. Now, of course, those blocks really just cover the big openings. They're still gonna have to be sealed up, and I'll use some expanding foam for that. But we're also gonna have to use the expanding foam for the doors and windows, which means we can start putting in doors and windows. But I wanted to point out the price because they were expensive back then, and they'd probably be way more expensive right now, but you also don't have to get this kind of stuff. You could get a cheaper door, you could get cheaper windows and still have good quality. Okay, let's start putting these things in. Now I've been watching a few videos over the last couple days trying to figure out the best way to do this. And here's the basics of it. You take a sealant, you put a bead on the two sides and the top, but not on the bottom because you want water to be able to go down and out away from the window. Then you put the window in place, make sure it's level and plumb, then you just nail it into the window frame. After that, you have to come back and cover it with more tape, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, let's just try to get this thing in place. All right, one of the mistakes I made here was actually framing this a little bit too small. I just have it big enough for the window to fit in. And it does fit, but you're supposed to go a little bit more so that you have some area to get it level and square and stuff. Luckily, I did a test fit and it fits in there and it's level and square. Well, I'll say that. It fit in there earlier. Oh, there it goes. Obviously, if there was extra room, I wouldn't just push it in there and leave it, but it's a tight enough fit that it's not gonna fall out while I screw it in. Now I said I was gonna screw those in place, and then obviously I'm nailing them in place. I think both of those options are good, at least from what I could tell. It's called a nail-in flange around the window, so I figured nails would be good. But as I started to do it, I realized why people might use screws. Not only does sealant get all over the end of your hammer because it's squishing out of the holes as you nail things in, but also nailing right next to this edge of a brand new window is a little bit risky. So I'm gonna finish this one up with nails, double check my research, and I'll probably switch to screws for the other two windows. That's pretty cool. Now that the window is in and sealed, we gotta tape it. And it's pretty similar to everything else, but there is something that I did not realize that I had to do. Check this out. You basically wanna use the tape like you do shingles. You put the lower stuff first and then you overlap from above to force water over everything instead of behind and under things. So you just do the sides first and then you do across the top. But when you're doing the sides, you have to overlap both the material on the wall, the flange, and the window. So you kind of need to go around the corner to make sure water doesn't get in behind all the things. The good thing is this stuff is kind of forgiving until you like really roll it down. You can peel it up and re-stick it a few times. That's pretty cool. I mean, check that out. That's pretty awesome. There's a breeze that blows through this field right at this corner, and so we wanted to be able to open the windows and have the breeze blow through these windows and out the big double door, which brings us to the big double door. Like always, I'm gonna be really honest with you, even at my own expense. I measured the door wrong. Actually, I don't know that I measured it wrong. I may have written it down wrong, or maybe I modeled it wrong. I'm not really sure where I went wrong, but somehow I made this opening 1.5 inches taller than it needs to be for the door that I bought. Now, luckily, this isn't really a problem. It's just a dumb mistake. I made the door opening bigger than it needed to be instead of smaller, because if it were smaller, we would have a pretty serious problem. Now, luckily, a 2x4 is 1.5 inches thick, so all I really have to do is put another 2x4 right there, except that it's not gonna have sheathing on the front of it, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. And also, I need to take off this tape, put the thing up there, retape it so everything is sealed up before I can start putting in the window. Like I said, just a dumb mistake. It's a good thing I got the taping on the windows done last night, because last night we also got a whole bunch of rain, so I want to see how they did. So I've checked out all the windows, top and bottom, and everything looks completely dry, which is really, really good. That makes me very happy. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case with the floor, but that's actually okay. It actually makes a lot of sense that water came in underneath the walls because I haven't finished waterproofing them yet. When I put down the bottom plate, I did put some foam underneath it. It's called sill tape, and it's like a expanded foam to keep the water from leaching up from the concrete into the wood. But it doesn't stop water from going underneath the foam itself. I've actually got 2 more processes I have to do to try to seal up that bottom edge and stop water from being able to get underneath that sill. The first is liquid flashing. This is the same stuff that I used on the sheathing to cover the nail holes, and I'm gonna use this with a brush to actually try to seal the bottom edge of this wood. That should stop water from being able to soak into this wood, but we also wanna stop it from going underneath the wood, which is what the polyurethane sealant is for. Big thick bead of this should act as a barrier to stop the water from going underneath and try to push the water the other direction. Oh my gosh. Terrible tape. What the heck? What in the world? You did it again! Ugh. Of course, I should mention this is not the most efficient way to do this. This stuff does come in like a paintable can form, and I'll get that once I run out of the tubes that I already have. The flashing has had overnight to dry, so now I'm going to put on the polyurethane and just put a big fat bead under there to try to seal it up. Now, I was ready to start working on the door, and then it started raining, like a lot. Water definitely got underneath the bottom plate and got inside on the floor. So I wanted to try to figure out how to get around that, even though I know it's something that I'm probably never gonna be able to completely eradicate in this particular situation. I dug out all the sealant that I had put in, and I put another really thick bead and then kind of smeared it up into a ramp to encourage the water to go this way rather than that way. And I think it worked. As you can see, that area is wet. We've had light rain the last couple of days. Luckily, the inside is dry. Before I made the fix, there was water on this entire plate. And so luckily right now, there is no water at all. But I really want to prove that it worked. So I think I'm gonna get it wet on purpose. Now, if it's still a problem, I do think I have another solution, but if I can avoid it, I would like to. So up here against the building, I have almost 1/4 inch of standing water. So if it's gonna leak, I should definitely be able to see it. And another thing to consider is that eventually there's gonna be a gutter along here that's gonna help stop that amount of water from ever ending up right here. Okay, let's go inside and see if we can see any water. I went back and sprayed quite a bit more water just to make sure, because I really don't want this thing to leak. And I think I'm good. There's no water coming through at all. And that 1/4 inch of standing water that I mentioned was while I was spraying it. It actually drains off the wall really quickly. So I think I'm good, but let's talk about the solution just because it might be helpful. Is actually putting in Z flashing. This is a tip that I got from Matt Reisinger, who I have more respect for every single day. He's pretty great. Go check him out on YouTube. He said to use this. This is really difficult to This is a piece of Z flashing, and you can see why, because of the shape. Basically, you cut a little slot in the concrete that allows water to go in and drain out, and then you drop this piece down inside that slot. This piece goes up against the building, and then you tape it in place like everything else. It's actually really smart and really simple, and this piece of flashing is like $4. The flashing I picked up is galvanized, and I don't think I would actually use that because they also have aluminum and stainless. That's what Matt used. I'll link his video so you can find out all the details. I think we're good on the water for now. We gotta go back to the door. My back. Now that little piece of sheathing honestly doesn't do anything at all, except for bring it out flush with the rest of the wall. But I still have to tape the entire thing, starting down here and working up over top of the existing flashing tape. That way I make sure that no water will get down behind what I already have. Incidentally, my neighbor just came over and said that the city building inspector was a couple doors down a few days ago and saw this and was about to send me a nasty letter because I did not pull a permit. And I wanted to remind you, and I reminded him on the phone, that in my area, you don't have to have a permit for any building that's under 200 square feet. This one's 163 square feet, so I'm good, but be sure to check your local code. I had to call the city and verify that before I started building. I know, you're probably thinking, what a cool t-shirt you have on, Bob. Yes, I do, and you can get it at shop.ILikeToMakeStuff.com. Cool beans.
Cool beans.
Well, I was about to start putting in the door and noticed that we have another little problem. These doors that I ordered over 5 years ago are exterior French doors. They outswing, so they open outward, and that should give us a little bit more room on the inside. Now, the doors themselves are fiberglass. The threshold is metal, but the frame is wood. Now, for the most part, this is not a problem, except that this is gonna be sitting directly on the concrete slab. So that wooden frame is gonna touch concrete right there. That means that this whole section down here, that's not even finished, by the way, will be touching water directly. So my options are to like try to cover or paint the bottom edge of that just to seal it up, but honestly, I don't think that will last that long. Or I could completely replace the frame with something that wouldn't rot, but that would be a huge pain. It's got weather stripping, mortises for the hinges. It would be a lot to do. So instead, I think I'm just gonna replace the bottom little piece. This is a PVC 1x4. This is solid PVC, it's never gonna rot, so I'm thinking that I can probably cut a little chunk of this and then cut out a piece of the door frame, replace it with this, screw it all together so it's nice and solid, and we shouldn't have any problems. I finally got some help. My awesome wife, Jenny, helped me lift the door into place. She's strong. It's incredibly heavy, so I could not have done it by myself. And now we've got it held in place just with 2 screws. One right here and one on the other side. And now I have to make sure that both of the sides of the frame are level, put in shims every, I don't know, 8, 12 inches or something like that, all the way down. This is gonna take a little bit of time. Cool. The door is in place, and we need to seal that gap all the way around with the expanding foam, as well as that space in between all the rafters. Speaking of the rafters, there was a comment in the last video that gave me a really good idea. Somebody brought up rafter ties, which is not something I had really thought about, and really they're necessary for hurricane force winds. But I live in a place where we actually get a lot of tornadoes, and those winds can be crazy too, so I checked out rafter ties. In a really strong wind, a roof can be ripped off of the walls, and you don't want that. A rafter tie is a simple piece of metal that connects the rafter to the wall. You do one of those on every single one, and it makes a strong joint between them to keep them stuck together. In some places, these are actually required by code. I don't know if they are here, but it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna put them in place anyway. It's a great peace of mind, and they cost 98 cents a piece. This is brick mold. This is the side that faces out. You can get it made out of wood, but I got it made out of PVC because it will never rot. And since it's gonna be touching the ground out there, that's definitely something to consider. This stuff cuts with regular woodworking tools. You can use PVC glue to seal up the joints, and you can just use caulk to seal up the outside edges. One downside though is that it smells like eggs when you cut it. Okay, I don't know if it's strictly necessary, but I'm gonna pre-drill the holes in the front of this for the finishing nails because I don't want this stuff to split. And then on the back side, I'm gonna put a thick bead of silicone on the front and the back edge, top to bottom all the way, because I wanna try to seal up the back of this to the building as best as I can.
I'm baking muffins as best as I can!
And after it's all in place, I'll come back and re-caulk all the seams. It's all gonna get painted eventually, so we should be pretty good as far as water goes. I do have a little spacer down on the ground, just so it's not sitting directly on the ground. I don't want water to be able to go underneath it to the drain that's in front of this building. Check it out, I got a door, and it actually like closes and it keeps stuff out. In fact, this is sealed up, and so are the windows, and so is the base of the building, and so are the rafters. So theoretically, we shouldn't have any problems with water or animals or most bugs. I think this thing is actually weathered in. And that's a good thing because apparently we're gonna get snow on Monday, so I need to go order the roof. Thanks for hanging out with me. Catch you next time. I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry. When I made both the front and, oh my gosh, dog. Okay, so the seam, showing you how to do that the hardest way possible. Let me how you, holy farts. This is a piece of Z flashing, and you can see why because of the name.